All right, so I haven't been doing predictions this election season, but we do have Super Tuesday coming up tomorrow, and I want to give everybody just a little bit of information so you know what to expect. You know what the best case scenario is, the worst case scenario is, and what everything in between is. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show you here. These are the odds from 538, and you're going to see before Biden's South Carolina victory and then after Biden's South Carolina victory. And you'll see, roughly speaking, where we stand. So here are the odds before Biden's South Carolina victory and what Super Tuesday would have looked like. So in California, Bernie had an 89% chance of victory. 89%. Biden is way back there at 7%. The polls have Bernie up at least 15 points there. So it looking very likely that there's a Bernie victory in California. The question is really, how big is the margin? Now, the bigger the margin, the better. If somehow we can make it so Biden isn't even viable and he's not over 15%, that goes a long way into getting a majority. Now, will that actually happen? It's looking unlikely that Biden won't be viable, at least in the most recent polls that came out. But it's almost certainly a Bernie Sanders victory in California, which on its own is really impressive, and we just want as big a victory as we can to run up the delegate count there. Texas, they have Bernie Sanders with a 52% chance of victory, Biden with a 35% chance of victory, and Bloomberg with a 10% chance of victory. Now, this one's interesting to me because I feel like the models have consistently underrated Bernie in Texas. I don't see how it's possible anybody else wins Texas unless there's a massive voter suppression effort. Now, there very well may be that, but with a pretty big Latino population in Texas and Bernie Sanders absolutely dominating among the Latino population, it looks very likely that not only will Bernie Sanders win Texas, but it'll be a pretty large margin. And then you have, now it gets a lot more interesting and tighter. North Carolina, basically a toss-up. You have 43% for Bernie, 36% for Biden, 19% for Bloomberg. Apparently, he's spending a lot there. Virginia, 48% for Bernie, 27% for Biden, 22% for Bloomberg. Now, I do have to say, that one, there's a question mark in my opinion. They have him with a big lead. These are the pre-South Carolina odds. They have Bernie with a pretty big lead there, but Virginia has a pretty sizable wealth population. They have quite a few people there who are well off, and I think that they might be they might present a struggle for Bernie to do well in Virginia. Then we have Massachusetts. You have Bernie with a 58% chance of victory, Warren with a 25% chance of victory in her home state, and Biden with an 8% chance. So Bernie was looking good there pre-South Carolina. Then you have Minnesota. It's dead tied between Bernie and Amy Klobuchar. That's her home state, so 47% to 47%. Colorado, Bernie, 83% chance of victory, 7% for Biden. Tennessee, a lot closer because it's one of the southern states. So you have Bernie 39%, Biden 39%, Bloomberg 17%. Alabama, you have this is one where Biden is a flat-out favorite, similar to South Carolina. Biden 61%, Bernie 21%, Bloomberg 17%. Oklahoma, we have, again, this is kind of a toss-up, and this is one that Bloomberg has made it competitive. There's not much polling that comes out of Oklahoma, though, but they have Bernie at 35%, and then Biden and Bloomberg at 30%, respectively. Then you have Arkansas. They have Bernie with a slight lead there, 38% chance. Biden 25, Bloomberg actually above Biden in Arkansas, 28. And then you have Utah, Maine, and Vermont are all giant Bernie strongholds there. You can see 87% chance in Utah, 67% chance in Maine, and 99% chance in Vermont. That's, of course, Bernie's home state. And American Samoa, 40% chance for Bernie, 27 for Biden, 20 for Bloomberg. So now, if you look at those numbers and you count it down and just go based off of, let's say the odds hold in every one of those states. Let's say the odds hold for argument's sake. The pre-South Carolina odds had Bernie winning 13 of 15 contests. Okay, that's a dominant victory. That's a giant victory. That's a bye-bye contested convention. I'm going to run away with this thing and get a majority type victory. Okay, now, temper your excitement because the odds do change post Biden's big South Carolina win. So here are the odds after Biden's South Carolina win. California, believe it or not, it's gotten better for Bernie because he's been campaigning there like crazy, and I think some early numbers have been released, and Bernie's crushing. So it's a 91% chance Bernie wins California. And the real question is, how big is the margin going to be, and will Biden be viable, and will Warren be viable? Will Warren get above that 15% threshold? So California, 91% for Bernie. Amazing. They have Texas now as a total toss-up, according to 538. 49% chance for Bernie, 48% chance for Biden. Now, I will say again, because of the demographics of Texas, because of how hard Bernie's been campaigning in Texas, because Biden's been MIA in Texas, I'll go out on a limb here and say, no, I think Bernie's going to win Texas, okay? But they have it as a toss-up now, post-South Carolina. Then you have North Carolina. All of a sudden, boom, Biden is now a big favorite in North Carolina, in part because the demographics of North Carolina are somewhat similar to South Carolina, and Biden crushed in South Carolina. So now Biden has a 77% chance of winning North Carolina, Bernie just an 18% chance. By the way, the polls are much closer than that, but these are the odds according to 538. Virginia. Okay, Virginia, now we have Bernie 41%, Biden 48%. Now Biden's the favorite in Virginia. Now, again, I'm concerned about Virginia just because there's a sizable wealthy population there. So if Bernie can win Virginia, that bodes well for him, in general. For it means he probably had a pretty good night overall. Now, Massachusetts, still Bernie a favorite, 63% chance to Warren's 30% chance. Minnesota, Bernie drops a little bit and Klobuchar becomes a slight favorite. Bernie 40% chance, Klobuchar 56% chance. In Colorado, Bernie's still a giant favorite, 85% chance for Bernie. In Tennessee, you have now Biden's a favorite because, again, Southern state favors Biden because older black voters like Biden. 61% chance for Biden, 26% chance for Bernie. Oklahoma, it was like a toss-up before. Now they have Biden, 45% chance, Bloomberg 27. Bernie even below Bloomberg in Oklahoma at 25. Arkansas, 39% chance for Biden, leads there. 30% for Bernie, 24% for Bloomberg. Utah. Now, again, you go through these three states, big, Bernie's a big favorite in all these states. 87% in Utah for Bernie, 67% in Maine, 99% chance in Vermont. And then you could see American Samoa is a little bit more of a toss-up now. Bernie, 35, Bloomberg, 20, Biden, 32. So, okay. If you take the odds and just say, hey, the favorite in the post-South Carolina odds wins every one of those things, so the probability holds up, okay? In that situation, Bernie would win 8 of 15. 8 of 15. So just to go back, rewind a second, 13 of 15 pre-South Carolina. Now, after Biden's big win in South Carolina, they say 8 of 15 for Bernie. Okay? Now, so either way, Bernie's gonna have the delegate lead. Okay? Almost no matter what happens, Bernie has the delegate lead coming out of Super Tuesday. The question is he gonna be on pace for a plurality, or is he gonna be on pace for a majority? If he's on pace for a plurality, that means we're probably going to have a contested convention and all of us need to get our butts to Milwaukee. That's what that means. If he's on pace for a majority, we could breathe easy a little bit and think, okay, he could get this on the first ballot and they can't even contest the convention. So we will have a much better idea of what the race will look like after tomorrow, either tomorrow night or Wednesday morning. So my guess is Bernie's going to be on pace for a strong plurality, which means if he's on pace for a strong plurality, then after Super Tuesday, it's still going to kind of be a toss-up between, is he going to have a majority or is he going to have just a plurality by the time the race is over? Things to look for on Super Tuesday. he's got wiggle room. So what that means is there's not like one scenario that's awesome for Bernie. There's a couple scenarios that could play out. So let's say Bernie wins Texas, Bernie wins California, but Biden's viable in California, Biden's viable in Texas, and maybe Warren is viable in California, and that takes away from him just like taking all the delegates home. In that scenario, you know, we won't be as happy because we want him to take like all the delegates from those delegate-rich states. But he can make up for it in other ways. So maybe his margin isn't that big in Texas, isn't that big in California. Okay, but if he picks off Virginia in that scenario, then it kind of wipes out the concern about how big the margin is in Texas and California. So there's no real one scenario that we're looking for. If you ask me what the most likely scenario is, he'll be on pace for a strong plurality, and I think maybe he'll win like 10 of 15 of the contests, and I think the other candidates will not really be within striking distance, but they'll still have a chance to stop a majority for Bernie. So that's what I think will happen. That's how I think it's going to unfold. But no matter what, and this is an important point, and I like to make this because it'll calm a lot of you people down if you're nervous. There is no scenario in which it's a devastating day for Bernie. Just so you understand. Even under a worst-case scenario where he wins 8 of 15 of the contests, he still won most of the contests. He's still going to come out of there growing his delegate lead, growing his popular vote lead. That's a virtual guarantee. So there's no scenario in which it's devastating for Bernie. But the worst-case scenario is he wins like 8 of 15, and he's not even on pace for a strong plurality. He's just on pace for a standard plurality of 30 or 35% or whatever it may be. And then it looks like a contested convention is very likely in that scenario. So, again, I think he'll probably win about 10 of the 15 contests. He'll get a pretty sizable delegate lead, but he still is not going to necessarily be on pace for a majority. So that means from here on out, we're going to have to work really hard. And, you know, listen, I'm in New York. We vote in April, and for the first time in my lifetime, my vote might actually really matter a lot. Because in 2016, I guess there was still a chance Bernie could win, but he was already pretty far behind Hillary by the time he came in here. And it felt like the vote mattered, but it might matter a hell of a lot more this time because it might actually be like, okay, is he going to get a strong plurality or a majority? It might actually be in that kind of a scenario where every single vote is going to matter massively. So just prepare yourselves. I tried to give you all of the possible scenarios here, how it could unfold. Really the best case scenario for Bernie. So I've told you guys what the worst case scenario is. I told you guys numerically what the best case scenario is. A night where Bernie cleans up and basically ends the race. He would win Minnesota. Klobuchar would lose it. He'd win Massachusetts. Elizabeth Warren would lose it. He would also win Virginia, maybe even pick off North Carolina, and also have giant victories in California and Texas. That would be the dream scenario. Wrap it up, skis. It's over. And guys, just so you know, even with Biden's big South Carolina win, that's possible that happens. And the reason I say that is the Biden win in South Carolina could genuinely be just smoke and mirrors because there's one demographic Biden does well with, older black voters, and that's who makes up the South Carolina electorate. So it's very possible that as soon as you get outside of the South, everywhere he's done. He's totally gone. And, you know, we told you that report from the New York Times, he hasn't been campaigning. He hasn't been campaigning in any of the Super Tuesday states. He has one office in California. His ground game is abysmal. There's no enthusiasm on the ground for him. He's kind of like a default option for a lot of people. So, you know, if that happens, oh my God, we're popping champagne on Tuesday night. See that if that happens, I'm gonna lose it. So we'll talk about it obviously after the fact, but if you're voting in one of these Super Tuesday states, go do the thing right now, man. Well, you can't do it now, but do it Tuesday ASAP. And if you can early vote in some of those states, you could do that as well. And by the way, the results for, I believe, Texas and California will not be fully in on Tuesday night because they do have ballots that they do have ballots beforehand that come in. They have early voting, and sometimes the ballots come in like on the day, and it takes like a couple more days to count it, maybe even a week to count the rest of them. So we'll know who wins those states, but we're not going to know exactly the margin that, Bernie would win by. So anyway, there's your breakdown, and I look forward to Super Tuesday, although I am nervous, and I'm sure many of you are as well.